I watched my sister Vanessa twirl in front of the mirror, her hands gliding over the crimson silk of her competition gown. $3,000 of beaded perfection that caught the light with every movement. My fingers twitched involuntarily, muscle memory reaching for piano keys that no longer existed. It's absolutely perfect, isn't it, Claire? Mom asked, not looking at me. She never really looked at me. Perfect, I echoed, my voice flat. Through the bedroom window, I could see the empty corner of our garage where my Steinway had stood for 8 years. The movers had taken it away yesterday, sold to some wealthy family across town for a fraction of what it was worth. The money immediately transferred to pay for the dress Vanessa was currently modeling. My piano, the one gift my grandmother had given me before she died. The only thing in this house that had ever truly been mine. Vanessa caught my eye in the mirror, and I saw it, that flash of triumph she thought she was hiding. But I'd seen it before. I'd seen everything before. Because this wasn't the first time I'd lived through this moment. 6 months ago, in another life, I'd stood in this exact spot and cried. I'd begged and pleaded. I'd thrown what Mother called an embarrassing tantrum that had earned me a slap and 3 days locked in my room. In that life, I'd played at Vanessa's piano competition anyway, forcing myself to smile as I accompanied her mediocre voice with the venue's inferior upright. I'd watched her come in third place and heard Mother blame me for not practicing enough, for not making Vanessa sound better. 2 years after that, I'd died in a car accident at 23. Alone, estranged from my family, working 3 jobs to pay for a music degree they'd refused to fund. I'd spent my last moments not thinking about my dreams or my future, but about that piano. About how I'd never fought back hard enough. About how I'd let them take everything from me, piece by piece, until there was nothing left. Then I'd woken up in my 16-year-old body 6 months before the piano would be sold. This time, I didn't cry. It really does suit you, Vanessa, I said, letting a small smile touch my lips. You'll look absolutely stunning on stage. Mother's head snapped toward me, suspicious. I never complimented Vanessa, but I kept my expression serene, almost dreamy. Well, Mother said slowly, I'm glad you're finally learning to support your sister, Claire. Perhaps there's hope for you yet. I nodded and excused myself, heading down the hallway to my small bedroom at the back of the house. I closed the door, leaned against it, and let out a long breath. The hard part was over. The piano was gone, and I'd reacted exactly as I'd planned, with quiet acceptance instead of rage. They thought they'd broken me. They thought I'd finally learned my place. They had no idea what was coming. People always ask what it's like to be reborn with your memories intact. They imagine it's empowering, knowing the future. They think it's like having a cheat code for life. They're not entirely wrong, but what they don't understand is the weight of it. The soul-crushing depression of watching your parents choose your sister over you. Again, knowing it's not a mistake or a misunderstanding, it's a choice. A deliberate, consistent pattern of behavior that you now get to experience in high-definition repeat. My name is Claire Donovan, and I'm a prodigy, or I was, or I could have been. In my previous life, my musical talent was something my family treated as both an expectation and an inconvenience. I was useful when they needed someone to play at church functions or accompany Vanessa's amateur singing. But the moment my dreams conflicted with Vanessa's desires, I became selfish, ungrateful, dramatic. It started when I was 7. Grandmother Chen, my father's mother, came to visit and heard me picking out melodies on the old keyboard in the basement. She watched me for 2 hours, tears streaming down her weathered face. Before she returned to California, she bought me a Steinway grand piano. Not a used one, not a starter model. A genuine concert-quality Steinway that cost more than my father made in a year. This child has a gift from the heavens, she'd told my parents in Mandarin, which she thought I couldn't understand. You will nurture it, or you will answer to me. For a while, they did. They enrolled me in lessons with Mrs. Kowalski, the best piano teacher in our city. They drove me to recitals. They even bragged about me to their friends. Then Grandmother Chen died when I was 10, and everything changed. Vanessa was 8 then, and she'd decided she wanted to be a singer. A pop star, specifically, inspired by whatever Disney Channel celebrity was trending that month. She had a decent voice, pleasant, in tune, nothing special. But Mother had dreams she'd never achieved herself, and Vanessa became the vessel for those dreams. Suddenly, my piano practicing was too loud. My recitals conflicted with Vanessa's voice lessons. My music theory books were taking up space that could be used for Vanessa's sheet music. When I won a regional youth competition at 11, Mother didn't come to the ceremony. She was taking Vanessa to an audition for a local theater production that Vanessa didn't even get. The worst part? I understood, even then. In my previous life, I'd spent years trying to rationalize it. Maybe I was too serious. Maybe I made them feel inadequate. Maybe if I'd been more grateful, more pleasant, more like Vanessa, cheerful and uncomplicated and easy, they would have loved me too. But sitting in my 16-year-old body with 39 years of memories, I finally understood the truth. Nothing I did would have mattered. Some parents have a favorite. Sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes they pretend they don't. Mine didn't pretend very hard. Father was a passive accomplice, a man who valued peace over justice. When I'd tried to talk to him about the favoritism in my previous life, he'd sighed and said, "Your sister needs more support, Claire. You're so self-sufficient. Can't you just let this go?" What he meant was, "You're inconvenient and you're making me confront uncomfortable truths about my marriage and my choices. Stop it." So I had stopped. I'd swallowed every hurt, every betrayal, every casual cruelty. I'd played smaller and smaller until I barely existed at all. The piano sale was just the culmination. Vanessa had qualified for a national singing competition when she was 17, the same year I was supposed to audition for the Juilliard pre-college program. My audition would have cost $500 in total. Application fee, travel to New York, one night in a hotel. Vanessa's competition dress cost $3,000. The choice to my mother was obvious. "Claire, sweetie," she'd said, in that condescending voice she used when she was about to do something cruel and wanted it to sound like love. "You know we can't afford both right now, and Vanessa's competition is televised. This could be her big break. You understand, don't you? You can audition for Juilliard next year." Except there was no next year. There was always something else. Vanessa's headshots, Vanessa's vocal coaching, Vanessa's recording session that never amounted to anything. And there was the brutal truth they never said aloud. They didn't think I was good enough. They didn't think my dreams were real dreams, not like Vanessa's. I was just their weird, intense older daughter who spent too much time on a hobby. A hobby. That's what Mother had called it once, not realizing I was in earshot. Claire's piano hobby. I'd won 17 competitions by then. When they'd told me about selling the Steinway, grandmother's Steinway, the last piece of her love that I had left, I'd broken down. I'd said things I couldn't take back. I'd called Mother cruel. I'd told Father he was a coward. Father had slapped me. The only time he ever raised a hand to me, and it wasn't to protect me. It was to shut me up. I'd played at Vanessa's competition anyway because what choice did I have? I was 16 and powerless. I'd accompanied her on a rented upright that was barely in tune, my heart broken, my spirit crushed. I'd done my best to make her sound good. She'd come in third. Mother had been furious. She'd blamed my energy, said I'd been visibly unhappy on stage, and that it had affected Vanessa's performance. As if Vanessa's mediocre performance was somehow my fault, not the natural result of her limited talent. After that, I'd given up. I'd stopped playing entirely. I'd let the music die inside me because what was the point? Every time I reached for something beautiful, they took it away. I'd graduated high school, moved out the moment I turned 18, worked terrible jobs to put myself through community college. I'd tried to play again, but my hands had forgotten. The muscle memory was gone, the passion was gone. I'd let it die for so long that I couldn't resurrect it. I died at 23, never having played at Carnegie Hall, never having attended Juilliard, never having become the pianist I was meant to be. But I'd learned something important in those years of struggle and poverty and loneliness. My family wasn't going to change. They weren't going to wake up one day and realize what they'd done. They weren't going to apologize. And I'd learned one other thing, something that would serve me well in this second life. In music, the most powerful moments are often defined not by what you play, but by what you choose to withhold. The turning point came exactly as I'd planned it. 3 weeks after they sold my piano, I came home from school to find Mother and Vanessa in the living room, both of them looking strangely uncomfortable. Claire, Mother said, using her fake sweet voice, we need to ask you something. I set down my backpack, keeping my expression neutral. I knew what was coming. In my previous life, this conversation had sent me into a panic. This time, I'd been waiting for it. Vanessa's competition is in 2 weeks, Mother continued, and we've run into a small problem. Her accompanist canceled. Food poisoning, she'll be out for at least a month. I waited. Let them ask, let them beg. We need you to accompany her, Vanessa said, not quite meeting my eyes. You know the piece. We've practiced it before. Mozart's Voi ci sapete from The Marriage of Figaro. A beautiful aria, technically simple for a pianist of my caliber. I'd accompanied Vanessa through it a dozen times over the years. In my previous life, I'd agreed immediately, desperate to be useful, desperate to be wanted. This time, I let the silence stretch. I don't have a piano to practice on anymore, I said finally. Mother's lips thinned. You can use the one at church. The church piano is booked for wedding rehearsals for the next 2 weeks. Then the one at your school. The music room closes at 4. I have work until 6. I'd gotten a job at a local coffee shop specifically for this reason, an airtight excuse. Claire. Mother's voice was sharpening now, the sweetness evaporating. Your sister needs you. You sold my piano, I said softly, for her dress. Don't be dramatic. That piano was too expensive to keep anyway. The maintenance alone, it was grandmother's. A flash of guilt crossed Mother's face, gone as quickly as it appeared. Your grandmother would have wanted you to support your sister. That was a lie. Grandmother Chen had barely tolerated Mother. She'd seen through her from the beginning, seen the favoritism, the manipulation. In one of our last conversations before she died, she'd held my hand and whispered in Mandarin, "The strongest tree in the forest is not the one that grows in easy soil. Remember that, precious girl." I'd forgotten that in my previous life. I'd let them convince me I was weak. I'll do it, I said, watching surprise bloom on both their faces. On one condition. Mother's eyes narrowed. What condition? After this competition, I'm done. I never accompany Vanessa again. I never play at family functions. I never perform for your friends. My music is mine, and you don't get to ask for it anymore. Claire, that's my condition. Take it or leave it. I saw the calculation in Mother's eyes. She needed me now. She could worry about the future later. Fine, she said. After the competition, you can do whatever you want with your music. I smiled. It was an empty promise, and we both knew it. In 2 weeks, she'd be asking me to play at some church event or another of Vanessa's auditions. She'd call me selfish and ungrateful when I refused. She'd try to guilt me into compliance, but she'd given me exactly what I needed. Permission to walk away. Witnesses to that permission. I'd learned something important in my previous life, working those terrible jobs. Always get it in writing. I want you to put that in an email, I said, just so we're both clear. Mother's face darkened, but she agreed. 20 minutes later, I had an email in my inbox. As per our discussion, after Vanessa's national competition, Claire will no longer be required to provide musical accompaniment for family events. This is Claire's choice, and we will respect it. I forwarded it to myself 3 times, saved it in 2 cloud services, and printed a physical copy. Then I got to work. The next 2 weeks were crucial. In my previous life, I'd practiced Vanessa's piece dutifully, perfecting every trill and arpeggio. I'd shown up to rehearsals on time. I'd been professional and supportive. This time, I did the bare minimum. I showed up to rehearsals, yes, but I played the piece mechanically without any of the artistry that could have elevated Vanessa's performance. When she missed entrances, I didn't adjust my tempo to cover for her. When she went flat on the high notes, which she always did, I didn't modulate to make it less obvious. You're not really trying, Vanessa complained after our 3rd rehearsal. I'm playing all the right notes, I said, but it doesn't feel, connected. You want me to make you sound good? Maybe you should have thought about that before you let Mom sell my piano. Her face flushed. That wasn't my fault. You wore the dress, didn't you? I left before she could respond. At home, in the privacy of my room, I practiced something else entirely. I'd found online recordings of the piece I'd been working on in my previous life before I'd given up. Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto Number 2, devastatingly beautiful, technically brutal. The kind of piece that separates competent pianists from virtuosos. I couldn't practice it properly without a piano, but I could practice it mentally. I'd visualized every passage, every hand position. I'd listened to recordings until I could hear every note in my sleep. I'd conducted along with them, my fingers moving through the air, rebuilding the muscle memory that had atrophied in my previous life. And I'd made a phone call. Mrs. Kowalski, my old teacher, was still teaching. I'd looked her up online, found her studio address. She was older now, nearly 70, but still active in the local music scene. I'd called her on a Wednesday afternoon. "Mrs. Kowalski? This is Claire Donovan. I don't know if you remember me." "Claire, of course I remember you. How could I forget? You were one of the most talented students I ever taught. How are you, dear? Are you still playing?" The genuine warmth in her voice had made my throat tight. In my previous life, I'd been too ashamed to call her after I'd stopped playing, too embarrassed to admit I'd given up. "I am," I said, "but I'm in a difficult situation. My family sold my piano, and I was wondering, do you still have the Steinway at your studio? Would it be possible for me to practice there sometimes? I can pay." "Sold your piano? The one from your grandmother?" "Yes, ma'am." A long pause. Then, "Claire, you come to my studio anytime you need. The key is under the blue flower pot by the back door. You don't need to call ahead, and you don't need to pay." That Steinway belonged to my late husband, and it's been lonely since he passed. It would make me happy to hear it played by someone who understands it. I'd cried after that call, quiet tears that I didn't let anyone see. For the next 2 weeks, I went to Mrs. Kowalski's studio every evening after school. I told my parents I was working extra shifts at the coffee shop. They didn't question it. They never paid much attention to where I was as long as I showed up to Vanessa's rehearsals. At Mrs. Kowalski's, I played. I played until my fingers ached, until the notes poured out of me like a dam breaking. I played the Rachmaninoff, and I played Chopin, and I played Debussy. I played everything I'd lost in my previous life and everything I was determined to reclaim in this one. Mrs. Kowalski came to listen sometimes. She never interrupted, just sat in the corner of the studio with tears in her eyes. "You've grown," she said one evening after I'd finished a particularly brutal practice session. "Your technique has always been flawless, but now there's something else. Depth, pain, experience." She had no idea how right she was. "There's a showcase next month," she continued carefully, "for advanced students and local professionals. I was asked to recommend performers. I'd like to recommend you, if you're interested." "I'm interested," I said immediately. "It's invitation only, very prestigious. Representatives from several music schools will be there, including Juilliard." My heart hammered. "I'm very interested." She smiled. "Then consider yourself invited. You'll need to prepare a 20-minute program. Your choice of pieces. 20 minutes, enough time to prove what I could do, enough time to show everyone what they'd lost when they dismissed me as a hobby, enough time to destroy Vanessa's competition completely, because I'd checked the dates carefully, very carefully. The showcase was scheduled for the same evening as Vanessa's national singing competition. The competition took place in a downtown hotel ballroom, converted into a performance space with professional lighting and a judge's table at the front. Participants ranged from ages 12 to 25, all competing for a $10,000 prize and a recording contract with a mid-tier music label. Vanessa was performing in the 17 to 20 division. There were 15 competitors in her category. I'd accompanied Vanessa to 3 run-throughs that week, each one more tense than the last. She could sense something was off with me, but she couldn't identify what. I was doing everything I was supposed to do, technically speaking, but there was no magic in my playing. No artistry that could elevate her mediocre voice into something special. "Maybe you should smile more," Mother had suggested at our final rehearsal. "You look so serious. It's off-putting." I'd smiled at her, a serene, empty smile that made her more uncomfortable than my frown had. The day of the competition, I woke up early and dressed carefully. A simple black dress, professional but not fancy. The kind of thing a competent but unremarkable accompanist would wear. I ate breakfast with the family. Father barely looked up from his newspaper. Mother was fussing over Vanessa's hair and makeup. Vanessa was running through vocal warm-ups, her voice shrill and anxious. Break a leg, I told her, and I meant it more literally than she knew. We arrived at the hotel at noon. The competition didn't start until 2, but Mother wanted Vanessa to have time to center herself and visualize success. I found the practice room assigned to us and sat at the piano. It was a decent Yamaha Grand, well maintained. I played through Vanessa's piece once, mechanically perfect. That's it? Vanessa asked. You're not going to practice more? I know the piece, I said. I've played it 100 times. What I didn't tell her was that I'd been practicing something else entirely. My fingers were loose and ready, but not for Mozart. They were ready for Rachmaninoff. At 1:45, I excused myself to use the bathroom. Instead, I walked out the front door of the hotel and kept walking. I made it 3 blocks before my phone started ringing. Mother's name flashed on the screen. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again and again. By the time I reached Mrs. Kowalski's studio, I had 17 missed calls and 12 increasingly frantic text messages. I turned off my phone. Mrs. Kowalski was waiting for me, her expression carefully neutral. Are you sure about this, Claire? I'm sure. Your family will be very angry. I know. She nodded slowly. Then let's make sure it's worth it. The showcase started at 7 in the evening in a small but elegant concert hall that seated about 300 people. The audience was a mix of music students, teachers, and industry professionals. I spotted at least 3 people I recognized from online research: a Juilliard admissions officer, a talent scout from a prestigious music agency, and a reviewer from a national classical music magazine. I was performing 5th out of 8. Enough time to settle my nerves, but not so late that the audience would be fatigued. I sat backstage, listening to the other performers. They were good, very good. A violinist who made her instrument sing, a cellist who played with devastating emotion, a pianist who performed a technically perfect Liszt etude. But I wasn't worried. I'd spent my entire first life being compared to Vanessa, being made to feel like my talent was less important than her mediocrity. I'd spent my entire second life so far preparing for this moment. When my name was called, I walked onto the stage and sat at the concert grand piano. It was a Steinway, almost identical to the one grandmother had bought me, the one my family had sold. I placed my hands on the keys and felt the cool ivory beneath my fingers. I took 1 breath. 2. Then I began to play. Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2 is not meant to be played as a solo piece. It's a concerto designed to be performed with a full orchestra. But there are arrangements, and there are pianists skilled enough to suggest the presence of the orchestra through the piano alone. I was one of them. The first movement opened with those iconic chords, deep and resonant, like the tolling of bells. My hands moved across the keyboard, drawing out the melody that had haunted me for 2 lifetimes. Every note was precisely placed, every dynamic carefully controlled. But technique wasn't enough. Rachmaninoff demands something more. It demands that you bleed into the keys. It demands that you take every moment of pain and longing and loss you've ever experienced and transform it into sound. I had plenty to draw from. I played the isolation of being the unwanted daughter. I played the grief of losing my grandmother and losing my piano. I played the rage of watching my family choose Vanessa over me, again and again and again. I played the desperate, aching hope that maybe, in this life, I could be something more than their disappointment. The audience disappeared. The hall disappeared. There was only the music and the memories and the keys beneath my fingers. I played the second movement, the lyrical adagio, with all the tenderness I'd never been shown. I played it for the child I'd been, practicing alone in the basement because my family found my music inconvenient. I played it for the young woman I'd become, dying alone because I'd let them convince me I wasn't worth fighting for. And I played the third movement, the Allegro scherzando, with savage joy. I played triumph. I played victory. I played the fierce, burning knowledge that I was good enough. I had always been good enough, and no one could take that away from me ever again. My fingers flew across the keys, executing passages that would have made most pianists weep. Octave runs that spanned the entire keyboard. Arpeggios that cascaded like waterfalls. Chords that required me to stretch my hands to their absolute limit. I played until my shoulders ached and my forearms burned. I played until I'd given everything I had. The final chord resonated through the hall, and I lifted my hands from the keys. For 3 seconds, there was absolute silence. Then the applause hit like a physical force. The audience was on their feet, not some of them, all of them. 300 people standing and clapping, and some of them crying. I saw Mrs. Kowalski in the third row, tears streaming down her face, her hands pressed to her heart. I stood and bowed, my legs shaking, my heart racing. This was what I'd been denied. This was what I'd lost when I'd let them break me. Never again. I walked off stage to find Mrs. Kowalski waiting for me. She pulled me into a fierce hug. "Claire," she whispered. "Oh, Claire, that was transcendent." Before I could respond, someone else approached, a tall woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an expensive suit. "Claire Donovan?" she asked. "Yes." "Dr. Melissa Chen, Juilliard Admissions. Can we talk?" I didn't turn my phone back on until I was safely in Mrs. Kowalski's car, driving home at nearly 11 at night. My mind was still reeling from the conversations I'd had after the showcase. Dr. Chen from Juilliard wanted me to apply for their college program, not the pre-college program I'd been hoping for in my previous life. The full 4-year bachelor's degree program. She'd practically guaranteed me a spot if my application was strong, and after hearing me play, she had no doubts it would be. A talent scout from the Morgenstern agency had given me her card and asked me to call her about representation. "We work with emerging classical artists," she'd said. "Help them build careers. You're exactly the kind of talent we look for." The reviewer from Classical Music Today had asked for an interview. 3 different local music teachers had asked if I'd consider giving master classes to their advanced students. It was everything I'd dreamed of in my previous life, everything I'd been denied, and I'd earned it by refusing to be their convenient tool. When my phone powered on, it immediately began buzzing with a backlog of notifications. 73 missed calls, 46 text messages, 6 voicemails. I listened to the voicemails on speaker as Mrs. Kowalski drove. The first one, from Mother at 2:15 p.m. "Claire, where are you? You need to get back here right now. Vanessa goes on in 20 minutes. The second, at 2:30 p.m. "Claire, this is unacceptable. Call me back immediately." The third, at 2:45 p.m., was Vanessa crying, "Claire, please come back. I can't do this without an accompanist. Please." I felt a twinge of something, not quite guilt, but close to it. Then I remembered her face when she'd modeled that dress, that flash of triumph. The fourth voicemail was Father, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Claire, I don't know what you think you're proving with this stunt, but you've humiliated your sister and your mother in front of hundreds of people. When you get home, we're going to have a serious conversation." The fifth was Mother again, her voice now icy. "I see, so this is who you really are, selfish and vindictive. Fine, stay wherever you are, but don't expect to be welcome in this house." The sixth voicemail was from a number I didn't recognize. I almost skipped it, but something made me listen. "Hi, Claire. This is Amanda Reeves. I was at the showcase tonight, and I heard you play. I'm actually a talent coordinator for the city orchestra, and we're looking for a featured soloist for our spring gala. It's a paid position, and the exposure would be incredible. I know this is out of the blue, but if you're interested, please call me back." I saved that voicemail. Then I read through the text messages. Most were variations on the voicemails, accusations, guilt trips, threats. But one caught my attention. It was from Vanessa, sent at 9:47 p.m. They gave me a pity spot. "Let me perform without an accompanist, singing a cappella." I came in 12th out of 15. Everyone was staring at me. Everyone knew I'd been abandoned. "I hate you." I read it twice. Felt that same not quite guilt. Then I typed my response. "You hate me. You watched them sell my piano and said nothing. You wore the dress and said nothing. You've spent your entire life taking everything I had and never once said thank you. I don't care if you hate me, Vanessa. I'm done caring what any of you think." I hit send before I could second guess myself. Mrs. Kowalski glanced at me. "Are you all right?" "I'm perfect," I said, and I meant it, because I didn't go home that night. Mrs. Kowalski let me sleep in her spare bedroom, and in the morning she made me breakfast and told me stories about her late husband, who had been a pianist too. He would have loved hearing you play, she said. You have something special, Claire, not just talent. Fire. Don't let anyone put it out. I won't, I promised. At noon, father called. Not mother, not Vanessa, father. Claire, he said, and he sounded tired. We need you to come home. I'm not coming home. Claire, you sold my piano, grandmother's piano, the last thing I had from her. You sold it to buy Vanessa a dress, and you didn't even hesitate. Then you expected me to help her anyway, because that's what I do, right? I'm the support system. I'm the one who's supposed to sacrifice everything so Vanessa can have her dreams. That's not... That's exactly what it is, and I'm done. I'm 18 in 6 months. I'll stay with Mrs. Kowalski until then. After that, I'll figure it out. You're being unreasonable. I laughed. It came out sharper than I intended. I'm being unreasonable? Dad, I performed at a showcase last night. A legitimate professional showcase. I played Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, and I brought 300 people to their feet. Juilliard wants me. The city orchestra wants me. I have opportunities you can't even imagine, and I earned every single one of them by myself, without your support, without your encouragement, despite everything you took from me. Silence on the other end. Did Vanessa tell you how the competition went? I asked. She came in 12th. And does mother blame her for that? Or does she blame me? More silence. That's what I thought. I took a breath. I'm not coming home, Dad. Not now. Maybe not ever. You made your choice when you sold that piano. I'm making mine now. Claire? I hung up. The next few weeks were a blur of activity. I moved in with Mrs. Kowalski officially with her enthusiastic permission. She had a full guest suite, and she insisted she loved the company. I finished my senior year of high school, maintaining straight A's because my academic scholarship to music school would require it. I filed for early emancipation with Mrs. Kowalski as my sponsor, citing irreconcilable differences with my family and a stable living situation. The judge approved it without much question. I was almost 18 anyway, and I had a clear plan for my future. I applied to 5 music schools: Juilliard, Curtis, Oberlin, Eastman, and New England Conservatory. I got into all 5. Juilliard offered me a full scholarship. I recorded a demo album with help from the Morgenstern Agency, who signed me as a client. It featured 3 pieces: the Rachmaninoff that had launched my rebirth, a Chopin nocturne that showcased my ability to play with delicate emotion, and a listitude that proved my technical prowess. The album got picked up by Classical Music Today for a feature review. The reviewer called me a once-in-a-generation talent and a force of nature at the piano. I performed as the featured soloist at the City Orchestra's Spring Gala, playing Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 21. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mozart, the composer Vanessa had been supposed to sing at her competition, but I played it the way Mozart deserved, with joy and precision and perfect technical control. My family was not invited. They tried to contact me a few times in those first months. Mother sent emails that alternated between guilt-tripping, after everything we've done for you, and manipulation. We miss you so much. Please come home. Vanessa sent nothing. Father sent one message. I'm sorry. I should have stood up for you. I know that now. Too little, too late. I didn't respond to any of them. In May, 3 months before my 18th birthday, I got a letter in the mail from a law firm in California. I opened it expecting legal trouble. Maybe my parents were contesting the emancipation or trying to claim some right to my earnings. Instead, I found something else entirely. The letter was from the executor of my late grandmother's will, specifically an addendum to the will that had been sealed for 8 years and was only to be opened if certain conditions were met. The condition: if the Steinway piano she'd purchased for me was ever sold or removed from my possession before I turned 25, a secondary trust would be activated. That trust contained $200,000 and a letter addressed to me. I read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down my face. My dearest Claire, if you are reading this, then I fear my worst suspicions about your mother have been confirmed. I hope I am wrong. I hope you are reading this at 25 with your piano intact and rolling your eyes at your paranoid old grandmother. But if I am right, if they sold your piano, If they took from you the gift I gave you with all my love, then I want you to know something. You are not alone. You have never been alone. I have watched your mother since the day your father brought her home. I have seen how she smiles at my son and how she looks at him when she thinks no one is watching. I have seen the way she treats my granddaughters differently. I tried to talk to your father about it. He wouldn't listen. He loves her, and love makes us blind to the faults of those we cherish. So I am giving you this gift, not instead of the piano, but in addition to it. This money is yours to use however you need. If they took your piano, use it to buy another. Use it to pay for school. Use it to build a life free from people who don't appreciate you. But most importantly, use it to remember you are precious. You are talented. You are worthy of love and support and every dream you dare to chase. The strongest tree in the forest is not the one that grows in easy soil. With all my love, Grandmother Chen. I called Mrs. Kowalski into the room. I showed her the letter. We cried together for 20 minutes. Then I went online and bought a piano. Not just any piano, a Steinway Model D concert grand, the same model Grandmother had bought me. 9 feet of gleaming black perfection. The same model used in concert halls around the world. The same model I'd be playing at Juilliard. It cost more than the trust fund, but I had income now from performances and my recording. I could afford it. When it was delivered to Mrs. Kowalski's house a month later, I spent the entire first night just sitting on the bench with my hands on the keys, crying. "Thank you," I whispered to a grandmother who had seen me more clearly than my own parents ever had. "Thank you for believing in me." My 18th birthday came and went without fanfare. Mrs. Kowalski baked me a cake. We ate it while watching old movies, and she told me more stories about her late husband. "He would have loved you," she said again. "You remind me of him. That same fierce dedication. That same refusal to compromise your art." "Did his family support him?" I asked. She hesitated. "Not at first. His father wanted him to be a lawyer. His mother thought music was a waste of time. But he played anyway. He chose his truth over their approval." "Did he ever regret it?" "Not for a single day." A week later, I got a phone call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Claire Donovan?" A male voice asked. "Yes. This is James Chen. I'm your father's cousin. I live in San Francisco. I hope you don't mind, but your grandmother's lawyer gave me your number. I've been following your career, and I wanted to reach out." I'd met Uncle James exactly twice in my previous life, both times at family reunions when I was very young. He'd emigrated from Taiwan before I was born and had built a successful tech company in Silicon Valley. I barely remembered him. "Oh," I said, "hello. I heard about what happened with the piano. My aunt, your grandmother, she called me a few years before she died. She was worried about you. She asked me to keep an eye out, and I'll be honest, I didn't do a great job of it. I got busy. I assumed everything was fine. But then I saw your name in classical music today, and I did some digging." "I see. I want you to know that you have family who care about you, Claire. Not just your parents. My aunt loved you more than anything in this world, and she would be so proud of what you've accomplished. I'm proud of what you've accomplished." My throat tightened. "Thank you. If you ever need anything, and I mean anything, you call me. I'm serious. A place to stay, financial help, career advice, someone to come to your performances and cheer way too loud, whatever you need." "I'll remember that," I said, and I meant it. After we hung up, I sat for a long time thinking about family. About the one you're born into and the one you choose. About the people who share your blood but not your values. And the people who share neither but love you anyway. Mrs. Kowalski had become more of a mother to me in 6 months than my actual mother had been in 18 years. Uncle James, practically a stranger, had reached out with more support than my father had offered in years, and somewhere in California, Grandmother Chen had loved me enough to see the future and try to protect me from it. That was family, not obligation, not proximity, love, choice, support. Everything my parents had failed to give me. In August, I moved to New York to start at Juilliard. Mrs. Kowalski helped me pack, crying the entire time. "You come visit," she ordered, "and you call me, and you send me recordings of your performances." "I promise," I said, hugging her tight. I'm so proud of you, Claire. So incredibly proud. Uncle James flew in from San Francisco to help me move. He rented a van, drove me to New York, helped me haul my new Steinway up 3 flights of stairs to my small but adequate apartment near campus. This is it, he said, standing in my empty living room with his hands on his hips. The start of your real life. It feels like that, I admitted. Your grandmother would be so happy right now. I know. My first semester at Juilliard was everything I'd dreamed of, and more. I was surrounded by talented musicians who took their craft as seriously as I did. My professors were world-class performers who pushed me to be better. I practiced 6 hours a day, sometimes more, losing myself in the music. I performed in student showcases and faculty recitals. I collaborated with other musicians on chamber pieces. I started teaching piano to a few younger students, sharing what I'd learned. I was happy, genuinely, completely happy, and I never played my family's favorite song. I'd forgotten about that detail until Thanksgiving when Mother called. I'd been expecting her to reach out around the holidays. Guilt ran deep in families, and holidays amplified it. Claire, she said when I answered, it's Mom. I know. How are you? How's school? It's good. A pause. We miss you. It's not the same without you here. I didn't respond. We're having Thanksgiving dinner at home. Your aunt and uncle are coming, and Vanessa will be here. We'd love it if you could come. I can't, I said. I have commitments here. Claire, was there something else you needed? Another pause. Your father's birthday is next month. We're having a small party. He's turning 55. You know how much he loves when you play that song at his birthday? The one from... No. What? I'm not playing for Dad's birthday. Claire, it's his favorite song. You play it every year. It's tradition. I told you. After Vanessa's competition, I was done playing for family events. You agreed to that. You put it in writing. That was different. You were upset. I thought you'd calm down and... And what? Forget that you sold my piano? Forget that you chose Vanessa over me every single time? Forget that you made me feel worthless my entire childhood? Claire, that's not fair. No, Mom, what's not fair is that you called me after 6 months of silence just to ask me to play at Dad's birthday party, not to apologize, not to ask how I'm doing, not to say you're proud of me, just to use me, again. I don't understand why you're being so cruel. I'm not being cruel. I'm being clear. You don't get to have my music anymore. You gave up that right when you sold my piano. You gave up any claim to me when you made me feel like I didn't matter. Of course you matter. Then why did you sell it, Mom? Why did you take the one thing I loved more than anything and give it away like it was nothing? Silence. That's what I thought, I said. Don't call me again unless you have something real to say. I hung up and blocked her number. Then I called Uncle James and cried for an hour. You did the right thing, he said. I know it doesn't feel like it, but you did. It hurts, I admitted. I know. Choosing yourself always hurts when you've spent your whole life putting other people first. But it gets easier. When? When you wake up one day and realize that the family you've built is better than the family you were born into. When you realize that you don't need their approval to be happy. I wanted to believe him. I started to believe him around February. I'd been asked to perform at Carnegie Hall as part of a showcase for young talent. It was a huge opportunity, the kind of thing that could define a career. I'd be playing the Rachmaninoff again, the piece that had started everything. I invited Uncle James, Mrs. Kowalski, and a few close friends from school. I didn't invite my parents. The night of the performance, I stood backstage feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline and nerves. I peeked through the curtain and saw the audience filling in, over 1,000 people. And there, in the 5th row, I saw them. Mother, father, Vanessa. They'd come anyway. My first instinct was anger. How dare they show up uninvited? How dare they think they could just appear after everything? But then I looked closer. Mother was sitting stiffly, her hands folded in her lap, her face carefully neutral. Father looked uncomfortable, like he wasn't sure he should be there. And Vanessa was crying. Not dramatic, attention-seeking tears. Quiet tears that she was trying to hide, wiping at them when she thought no one was looking. I turned away from the curtain and took a deep breath. They were here. Fine, let them watch. When my name was called, I walked onto that stage and sat at the piano. I looked out at the sea of faces, and I let my eyes linger on my family for just a moment. Then I played. I played the Rachmaninoff the way it deserved to be played, with every ounce of skill and emotion I possessed. I played it better than I had at the showcase, better than I'd played it in any practice session. I played it like this was the only chance I'd ever get to prove my worth. And when I finished, the audience stood and applauded for 5 minutes straight. I took my bow, I walked off stage. And I didn't go to the reception afterward. Instead, I went out the back door and found a coffee shop around the corner. I sat there with a latte, still in my performance dress, and I breathed. My phone buzzed. A text from Uncle James. "You were magnificent. I'm so proud of you." Another text from Mrs. Kowalski. "Transcendent, my dear, simply transcendent." And then a text from a number I didn't recognize but somehow knew. "Claire, it's Vanessa. Can we talk, please?" I stared at it for a long time, and then I typed, "Tomorrow, coffee shop on Amsterdam and 73rd, 2 p.m. Her response came immediately. "Thank you." Vanessa showed up 5 minutes early, looking nervous. She'd cut her hair short, and she looked thinner than I remembered. Tired. We ordered our drinks in silence and sat down at a corner table. "Thank you for meeting me," she said finally. "Why are you here, Vanessa?" I wanted to apologize. I waited. "I knew what Mom was doing," she said, her voice quiet. "The favoritism. The way she treated you differently. I knew, and I didn't say anything. I told myself it wasn't my fault, that I didn't ask for any of it, but that was bullshit. I benefited from it. I let you take the blame for everything. I let her sell your piano, and told myself it was okay because I needed that dress. Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I listened to you play last night, and I realized something." She looked down at her coffee. "I was never going to be as good as you. Mom pushed me so hard to be a star, but I don't have what you have. I'm decent. I'm fine. But you're extraordinary, and I was so jealous of that. So this is about guilt." "No, yes, I don't know." She wiped at her eyes. "After the competition, everything fell apart. Mom was furious at you, but she was disappointed in me too. She stopped paying for my voice lessons. Said I needed to prove I was serious. I tried out for some local theater productions and didn't get cast. Started community college because I didn't get into any music schools. Kept singing, but it felt hollow. Vanessa, I quit," she said, "last month. I quit singing. Not because Mom wanted me to, but because I realized I was only doing it for her. I never loved it the way you love piano. I just loved the attention. The validation. I didn't know what to say. Mom and Dad are getting divorced," she continued. "Dad finally stood up to her. Told her that losing you was the worst thing that ever happened to our family, and it was her fault. She didn't take it well." "I'm sorry," I said, and I was surprised to find that I meant it a little. "Don't be, it needed to happen. The whole family was toxic, and you were the only one brave enough to get out." She looked at me directly. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't deserve that. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what happened. And I'm sorry." We sat in silence for a while. "What are you doing now?" I asked finally. "I'm studying psychology at community college. Thinking about becoming a therapist. Trying to figure out who I am when I'm not performing for someone else's approval." "That's good." "Yeah, it feels right." She finished her coffee. "I should go, but Claire, thank you for letting me say this. And congratulations on everything. You deserve it all." She left before I could respond. I sat there for another hour, processing. Vanessa wasn't the villain I'd made her out to be. She was just another victim of Mother's manipulation, shaped into a different role. She'd been the golden child, and I'd been the scapegoat, but neither of us had been truly seen or loved for who we were. It didn't excuse what she'd done, but it explained it. And maybe someday there could be something between us again. Not the relationship we'd had. That was too damaged to salvage. But something new, something honest. Maybe. 3 years later, I graduated from Juilliard at the top of my class. I'd performed with orchestras in 5 different countries. I'd released 2 albums, both to critical acclaim. I'd won competitions and awards. I'd been featured in magazines and interviewed on classical music podcasts. I was 22 years old, and I was living my dream. Uncle James came to my graduation along with Mrs. Kowalski and about a dozen friends from school. After the ceremony, we went out for a celebratory dinner at a fancy restaurant that Uncle James insisted on paying for. To Claire, he toasted, raising his glass, who fought for her dreams and won. Everyone clinked glasses and drank. Later, after most people had left, Mrs. Kowalski pulled me aside. "Your grandmother would be so proud," she said, her eyes misty. "I know," I said. "I think about her all the time, about what she saw in me when nobody else did." "She gave you the tools, but you did the work, Claire. Never forget that." I hugged her tightly. As I was leaving the restaurant, I saw someone standing on the sidewalk outside. My father. He looked older than I remembered. Grayer, thinner. "Claire," he said, "can we talk just for a minute?" I considered saying no. I considered walking past him without a word, but I was tired of running from my past. "1 minute," I said. "I'm proud of you," he said immediately. "I should have said that years ago. I should have protected you from your mother. I should have stood up for you when it mattered. I didn't, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life." "Okay. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did to you, what I let happen to you. And I'm sorry." I studied his face. He meant it, I could tell, but sorry didn't change anything. Sorry didn't give me back my childhood or my piano or the years I'd spent feeling worthless. "Thank you for saying that," I said, "but I don't know if I can forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever." He nodded, accepting that. "That's fair. I just wanted you to know." "How's Mom?" "Not well. The divorce was hard on her. She's in therapy now, finally starting to understand some things about herself." He paused. "She asks about you sometimes." "Does she? She saw you perform once. About a year ago, you were playing at Lincoln Center. She bought a ticket and sat in the back. She cried through the entire performance." I didn't know what to do with that information. "I'm not asking you to reach out to her," Father continued. "I know I have no right to ask that. But I thought you should know. She does love you, Claire. She just didn't know how to show it in a way that didn't hurt you. That's not good enough, Dad." "I know." We stood there for a moment, two people connected by blood and history, but separated by years of pain. "I have to go," I said finally. "But thank you for coming. It means something, even if it doesn't fix anything." "Take care of yourself, Claire. Keep playing. Keep being extraordinary." I walked away from him and didn't look back. 5 years after my rebirth, I played at Carnegie Hall again. This time not as part of a showcase, but as the featured soloist for a fully sold-out concert. The marquee outside read, "Claire Donovan performs Rachmaninoff, Chopin, and Liszt." It was the culmination of everything I'd worked for. I stood backstage looking at myself in the mirror. I was wearing a deep blue gown that shimmered under the lights. My hair was styled elegantly. I looked like a professional concert pianist. I looked like the person I was always meant to be. There was a knock on my dressing room door. I opened it to find Uncle James and Mrs. Kowalski, both dressed up and beaming. "Ready to make history?" Uncle James asked. "I've been ready my whole life," I said. The performance was flawless. I played with technical precision and emotional depth, and the audience responded with thunderous applause after each piece. When I finished with the Liszt Etude, the standing ovation lasted for 7 minutes. 7 minutes of validation, of recognition, of people acknowledging that I was worth their time and attention. I bowed again and again, and I thought about the girl I'd been in my first life, the one who'd let them break her, the one who'd died alone and unfulfilled. She would have been so proud of me. At the reception afterward, I was surrounded by admirers and well-wishers. Critics, agents, fellow musicians, people who wanted to work with me, collaborate with me, celebrate me. And in the back of the room, I saw Vanessa. She'd come alone and she looked nervous, like she wasn't sure she should be there. I excused myself from the conversation I was in and walked over to her. "You came," I said. "I hope that's okay. I wanted to hear you play." "What did you think?" "I think you're the most talented person I've ever heard." Her eyes were wet. "And I think I wasted so many years being jealous of you instead of being proud of you." "Vanessa, I'm getting my master's in psychology," she said quickly. "I work with families now. Help parents understand how their behavior affects their kids. Try to break cycles before they do permanent damage. That's good work. It's because of you. Because I saw what mom did to you and realized how many other kids are going through the same thing. I wanted to help them, to be the person we needed when we were young. I didn't know what to say. I'm not asking for anything, she continued. I just wanted you to know that you changed my life. Made me want to be better, and I'm proud of you, Claire. I'm so, so proud. She left before I could respond, disappearing into the crowd. I stood there for a moment, processing. Then Uncle James appeared at my elbow. Family is complicated, he said quietly. Yeah, but sometimes people can grow. Sometimes they can become better versions of themselves. Maybe. You don't have to forgive her. You don't owe her anything. But you can acknowledge the growth if you want to. I'll think about it, I said. That night, I returned to my apartment and sat at my Steinway. I played for hours, letting the music flow through me. I played everything I'd performed that evening and more. I played the pieces that had defined my rebirth and the pieces I was still learning. And finally, at 3 a.m, I played the song my father had loved. The one he'd always requested at his birthdays. The one Mother had asked me to play 6 years ago, and I'd refused. I played it now, not for them, but for me. To prove that I could. To prove that my music was mine to give or withhold as I chose. And when I finished, I felt something I hadn't expected. Peace. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just peace. I'd spent my first life letting them take everything from me. I'd spent my second life taking it all back. And now, finally, I could just exist. Just play. Just be the pianist I was always meant to be. The strongest tree in the forest is not the one that grows in easy soil. Grandmother Chen had been right. I'd grown in the harshest soil imaginable, and I'd become stronger than anyone, including myself, had thought possible. And I'd never stop playing, not for them, not for anyone. For myself, for the music, for the girl I'd been and the woman I'd become, forever.